Well, everyone, welcome back to a very exciting episode of the Storybox podcast. You want to learn about things that matter in your life. I'm sure a lot of people want to learn about that. How about more of less? My guest today is pretty much the world-renowned Joshua Becker. Now, for those of you that somehow don't know who he is a best-selling author. He's a Wall Street Journal best-selling author, and he's a minimalist as well. He's the founder of Becoming Minimalist. I think he's one of the OG minimalists, if I can say that, on the show, one of the originals. He has a brand new book coming out, which is called Things That Matter, Overcoming Distractions to Pursue a More Meaningful Life. I love that title and subtitle. He's been featured in Forbes. He's also the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, many other sites as well. And he's got a following of, get this, 2.75 million people. That is an outstanding number. But Joshua, man, can I welcome you so much to the Storybox podcast today?
Of course you can welcome me. Thank you so much for having me. You can't be old enough to know who the OGs are of the movement, can you?
I think I can. I mean, doing some research, I think you're one of them. And then the other ones that I know are the minimalists. Forgot their names right now. I'm blanking on them. But yeah, I know. Forgive me, guys.
Yes, I did. Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot to name them all. But I think there were other people writing about minimalism 13 years ago, but usually in other contexts. And I think I was the first website ever dedicated specifically to it as a topic. So thanks for the intro.
I think that is incredible, man. And I want to park it there because I'll get back to why you decided to do this in the first place and unbox more of your story. My very first question for you is a question that I love starting off with all my conversations. It's what does success look like for you?
What does success look like for me? Boy, that is a good question. I would think success for me, maybe I'll answer this in a couple different ways. I think success is becoming the best version of myself that I can possibly be. I think that if I can get to the end of my life and not think that I wasted it in any way. Obviously, I'll have some regrets, and obviously there's some moments of wasting. But if I can get to the end of my life and think to myself, I did the best that I could with the person that I was, then that would be success. If I were to try to quantitate it a little bit more, my faith is very important to me. So I want to be a faithful follower of God. That's probably my greatest goal in life. I want to be a intentional father. I want to be a faithful husband, and then I want to make the biggest difference in the world that I can. Meaning, I want to bring about the greatest good for the greatest number of people. Is how I've begun to say that. And some people I think bristle a little bit when I say I want to make the biggest difference in the world that I possibly can, because I think that looks different for different people. And so for me, over the years, it's become building a blog and writing books and having a YouTube channel and making a difference in that way. But my wife, she stays at home and she raises our kids, and I only get to do what I do because she does what she does, and her impact on our kids' lives is different than the impact that I have in the world. But I think both of us are trying to make the biggest difference for the most amount of people that we can. So anyway, that's a long answer, and we could be here all day if I answer them all this long.
No, man, I love long answers. It saves me having to talk, as I say. But I'm curious, you mentioned something that was very interesting there, which is trying to strive for a more meaningful life, that sort of thing. What does the best version of your life look like?
I once had a boss, and I was asking him a little bit about success and how he tried to determine success or define success or know where to pursue success. And he used this phrase with me. He said, Joshua, for me, it's all about allocation of resources. And he said, so I have specific talents. I have specific gifts and abilities and experiences and even relationships and education and personality. And so where can I use my resources in the best way to serve other people? And so when I think of the best version of myself, or I think that was the original question. I even lost track of my thinking there, but right, that was the original question.
Yes.
Yeah. I would think that's it. I want to allocate my resources most effectively. I seem to have some talents in writing well that resonate with people. I seem to be able to speak in a way that resonates with people, view the world in a certain way that resonates with people. And so how do I use those gifts and abilities and talents and put them in the right place for the right purpose as well, which I guess is really what, not to jump the gun here, but a little bit about what the book is about. Things That Matter is about, like, what am I living my life for, and what are the things that I am pursuing? Because I could use all my talents and abilities and just try to make as much money as I possibly can, or get as famous as I possibly can. But I hope that my chief goal, my chief motivation, more than anything else, is to help others and serve others and make a difference in the world.
It's a selfless answer, man. I love it. And the second part of the question really is, what constitutes a meaningful life in your opinion? I know it's probably a big question, and it's a subtitle of your book, or part of the subtitle of your book. We could spend hours on this, but what do you think, like, to start off with, constitutes a meaningful life?
I have a bonus section in the book where I talk about how do I find what my most important pursuits are, like, where am I going to find the most meaning in my life? We did a survey for the book, and 70% of people said that they know what their purpose is in life. And it always looks different from one person to another, obviously. I think I was surprised that it was that high, just based on the number of emails that I get of, hey, I understand minimalism, but what am I going to do with my life if I'm not buying a bunch of stuff? And how do I know what my purpose is in life? And I get, like, a lot of those questions. And so I guess maybe 70% of people who know what that is. But I guess I would kind of hope that the book would cause people to rethink that in some ways. But what I get to in the book is I think that when we I draw a Venn diagram between what our talents and abilities are, what our passions are in life, and how do those intersect with other people's needs in life. And I think that that's where we find our purpose. That's where we find our meaning. I think that it is wonderful that different people have different passions in life, and different people see different problems and are passionate about different problems. And I think one of the problems in our world today is that if the problem that I'm passionate about solving isn't the problem that you're most passionate in solving, then I call you a bunch of names, or I make assumptions that you don't actually care, even though you just care about different things and are trying to solve different problems and serve different people. And so how do we combine our abilities, our passions, and how those intersect with the need in the world? And again, it's not that everybody is going to be having a following of 2 million people. Sometimes it's just the 2 or 3 people at home that follow you, that you influence the most. But that's where your passions can meet the needs of the world.
You said 70% knew their purpose, and the 30% didn't, or they're trying to, I guess, find their purpose. Why do you think so many people find it difficult to actually discover their purpose? And firstly, what is purpose?
What is purpose? Well, that would probably go back to my faith, and so I see a very spiritual connection between myself and God and the world, and what He would have, how He would have me live my life is what I think my purpose should be and ought to be. So that would certainly define how I define purpose, although different people are going to probably define that differently. Your first part of the question is why do people struggle with that? I think there's a part of maturing, growing up, learning who we are and what we do well that becomes refined, that helps us decide that. I think that there is probably one of my greatest passions for minimalism is my view in how the world and society and marketers tend to hijack our passion and our purpose, and we begin to define purpose as to how we think we see other people defining it. I want to make a lot of money. I want to make a name for myself. This becomes, I think, our purpose by default when we don't dig a little bit deeper into our hearts, and maybe we get to a point where we realize, hey, this isn't actually fulfilling my needs like I thought I would. Maybe there's a different purpose out there available for me. So I think those are some of the reasons. I think some people don't even ask the question, don't even necessarily. Maybe it's kind of nagging in them, but you're having a good time and having fun, and life seems to be just fine without wrestling with some of those questions. We live in a very loud world where there's a lot of entertainment and a lot of noise that we can use to fill our day, as opposed to wrestling with some of those deeper questions.
And they're all massive distractions, aren't they? They just distract us from what's really, really important in life. Yeah. And I talk about, because I am a person of faith, I believe in God as well. I'm a Christian. My audience knows that. I talk about having the God-given purpose, which is the best purpose of all, like knowing that your purpose is to be alive and to live on this earth. Like that's it. Like to serve in the best possible way. That for me is like the ultimate purpose. Like I can't think of a better one. Like so many people have told me their answer to what purpose is for them, but it doesn't even compare for me at all.
Yeah.
Amazing how that works.
Let me ask you the same question you asked me. So I'll give you the two results from the survey. 70% of people say that they have identified a clear purpose for their life. 77% say that they are distracted from that important pursuit, or they're chasing other things that keep them from it. But when you hear 70% of people have defined their purpose, is that where you would put the number? Or would you have guessed it higher, lower?
I would have guessed that number would have been extremely low, to be honest.
Yeah. I agree. It came in a little higher than I thought. As a matter of fact, we rearranged the book because I started out with like the chapter on how do I find my purpose, and then at least in my mind that's where it was going to go. And then the survey results came in, and 70% said they knew where it was. And I'm like, well, we probably don't need to lead with this. We'll put it in the back, and those 30% who really want to go down that road can find it. So, all right, interesting. And then why do you think that is?
I think today's day and age, more and more people are becoming aware of it because I think they're feeling like something is missing in their life. So I think they're going on that journey. Like for me, I mean, I'm 25 and I went on that journey in 2019 because I grew up thinking that my purpose was to be a filmmaker. I always considered purpose with something I needed to do as part of that being who I was. And so I am versus I do very confused. And so I thought that because I was a filmmaker, then I am worth something in society, and that suddenly became my purpose. And I just got that completely mixed up. And so I was chasing this thing that I thought was my ultimate purpose. And then when that didn't happen, I just felt stuck and lost and absolutely miserable, and thought, okay, well, now I've got to start figuring out what is really my purpose on this earth. And that's where I discovered like this light bulb moment God made for me. Like, Jay, your purpose isn't to do this, this, or this. It is to be a servant. It is to be alive and to live on this earth because I created you that way to do that. And that's what I discovered. So I think a lot of other people are sort of realizing the same thing, and they're asking more and more questions, which I think is a great thing. And the other 30%, I think you're right. There's a lot of still distractions and fear going on in their head. They don't know really where to start. That's my point of view. I don't know if you think the same thing.
Yeah. Very interesting. No, I would agree. I certainly agree. That's
so
good.
You also mentioned these other, I think you got 8 distractions in the book. 1, fear, past mistakes. Past mistakes is interesting. Why does past mistakes hold people back?
Again, this was a survey result that was probably the most, for me, it was the most heartbreaking of the survey results, and like legitimately, it shook me a little bit to see this. So the book is all about how do I get to the end of my life with fewer regrets? And I think the way we do that is by knowing what's meaningful to us, and then knowing that we dedicated our lives to it. It's going to be different for different people, but I think that when we waste our lives chasing things that don't matter, that this is when we get to the end of our life and have all these regrets about things we wish we had done differently. But if we stay focused on the things that matter, then some of the other metrics of, how much money did I make, or how big my house was, or how big did my podcast become, or how many people saw my films, like those metrics don't matter quite so much, as long as I know that I was faithful in pursuing things that mattered and gave my life to it. So that's the story of the book. And then, so I get in and mention a couple different mistakes and fears. The first 2 are kind of internal fear. Like, how does fear keep me from chasing some of these things? And then number 2 is past mistakes, which 60% of people say that they are held back by past mistakes they've committed in their past from living the future they want. And so that's 60% of people who can see that and can articulate that and can look back on one thing that they did in the past, like one major thing in the past holding them back, or reoccurring things that they keep falling back into over and over again. And then equally heartbreaking, maybe even more heartbreaking, 55% of people say 55% of people say that they're held back from the future they want because of a past mistake committed against them. And I use mistake pretty broadly. Like I say in the book, sometimes it's downright evil what someone did to you, but it was still a mistake. Kind of the all-encompassing word there. And I, why does it happen? I think that we don't always turn and face the problem. We just accept that it's a part of who we are, and we're never going to be whole again, or we're always going to be a little bit damaged, or we're always going to struggle with that thing over and over and over again, as opposed to turning it and facing it and doing the hard work of overcoming it or redeeming it, learning what we can from it, and rather than allowing it to hold us back, using it to propel us into a different future, or realize that there can be some some redemption that comes from that. However evil it might have been. It doesn't minimize the evil, but we can still look back and say, okay, it happened and I'm not going to change it, but how has it made me who I am today, and in a more positive way.
Do you have any regrets?
Do I have any regrets? I not in this extent. I don't look back and think that there are certain things that they're holding me back. I can look back on certain events and habits that have molded me into who I am, and how do I redirect that for positive? So this isn't the perfect example of the story of that chapter, but it's an example. So I was a twin. I'm about 6 foot, 175 pounds. My brother's 6'5", 220, 230. I always say if my brother was starting tight end on the high school football team, I played tennis. So this was our high school experiences. He was popular, star athlete, and I was small and skinny and playing tennis. And my parents, of course, loved us the same. I have great parents and great grandparents, and always a stable family. But my brother just always got more attention. Name was always in the paper more, and it really, I think, shaped me into wanting attention and wanting to be noticed and striving to be noticed and appreciated. And I have there's a whole chapter in the book on accolades and seeking reputation and being noticed. And certainly that comes from, I think, my background and just growing up that way. And so it's something that I wrestle with and fight with. And yeah, I can feel it when that becomes the goal in life, when the goal becomes to be known more, as opposed to just doing the best that I can with what I have. It changes the way I act and changes some of the things that I do, not always in healthy ways. So all that to say, I don't know if that holds me back, because I think I have a pretty good grasp on what that is and who it's made me to be. And so how do I use that motivation for positive ends, as opposed to it sending me down a road that I'll look back on and regret later.
Did you always see yourself becoming minimalist, or what did you?
No, I was so I pastored for 15 years, and my grandpa was a pastor, and that's what I always loved doing. Although I thought I was going to be a banker. I went to college to be a banker because that's what my dad does, but ended up becoming a pastor right out of college, I mean. And that's what I did. Minimalism popped up on my radar 13 years ago. Actually, the short story is I wasted a whole Saturday morning cleaning out my garage. And my son was 5 and he was in the backyard playing by himself, asking me to play. And I kept telling him that I couldn't because I had to clean the garage. And hours later, I started talking to my neighbor, and she's the first one to ever use the word minimalism. She said, well, that's why my daughter keeps telling me, she said, that's why my daughter's a minimalist. She keeps telling me I don't need to own so much stuff. And I looked at the garage I spent all morning taking care of, and my son alone in the backyard, and like just this light bulb moment of, what am I doing with my life? Like, why do I own all this stuff that's taking me away from the time that I should be spending with my son? And I have all this stuff, and yet I still want more. Like I'm not, I've gone way past having what I need, and yet I'm still not satisfied. And not only am I not satisfied, but all this stuff is actually taking me away from the things that do matter most. So that was my journey into it. I never dreamt I would be writing about it 13 years later, much less that it would be a career or a passion of mine to spread the message. But I started blogging and started sharing a little bit about my story and what I was learning and what I was noticing. And more and more people were drawn to the website, and it kept growing and growing, and came a point where I always say I couldn't do both. I couldn't both pastor and keep up the blog and the writing, because it was becoming too much. And so needed to decide what I was going to do with my time. And like I say, there were many pastors who were better than me, but there weren't a lot of people writing about minimalism who were doing it better than me. So that's why I decided to do that.
For those people that don't know what it means to be a minimalist or what minimalism is, can you share what that is? And secondly, how does being a minimalist help you live a more meaningful life?
Yeah, that's good, because it's been 13 years. And so I think certainly when I first started writing about minimalism, there was an assumption about what it meant, and can only have 100 things, or you live in a tiny home. And I usually say that I was probably the one that broke that mold, because I had a house in the suburbs, and there were 4 of us, and I was never going to own just 100 things, but I was certainly going to try to get down to owning just what I needed. But minimalism is essentially about recognizing that there are more important pursuits in life than physical possessions. And in the further realization that all the things we own take up money, time, focus, energy. Everything we own has to be cared for and taken care of, not to mention how much time we spend trying to make more money so we can buy more things just to bring them home to take care of them. And so minimalism seeks to remove the distraction of physical possessions so that I can focus more of my life on the things that actually matter. So I define it as minimalism is the intentional promotion of the things I most value by removing anything that distracts me from it. And it started for us with physical possessions, but can go beyond that into other areas as well. And so that's how I define it, knowing that it looks different from one person to another. We were a family of 4, which is going to look different than a single guy in their 20s or empty nesters in their 60s. Like it's going to look different if you live in the middle of a city, or if you live out in a rural community. It's going to look different if you're a farmer or a banker or a dentist or a teacher or a writer, or a filmmaker, like what you do, how you make a living in the world and how you serve the world is going to depend on, or the things that you own is going to depend on those types of things. So how does it help me live a more meaningful life? I think it, hopefully removes distractions, not just removing the amount of my life that I need to use taking care of my stuff, but also I hope it redirects my passions and desires towards wanting to buy new things, wanting the bigger house, wanting the nicer car, the bigger television, and allows me to use my money, time, and energy and focus on more meaningful pursuits.
How does your faith tie into that?
Oh, a ton. So certainly, people find minimalism coming from any and every faith and non-faith background, and I think that there's benefit for everybody. And I've always tried to write both my blog and my books in a way that doesn't alienate anybody, regardless of their faith or non-faith. But for me, it was always a big thing. I mean, my understanding of who God is, that there is a God, that there is a spiritual realm to the world, hopefully helps me break free from physical things. Like I just know that there are deeper things in my heart and soul than physical possession. So certainly plays into it. Minimalism really kind of changed my view of a lot of Jesus's teachings, actually the whole New Testament in a lot of ways. Like Jesus talks a lot about life is not found in the abundance of possessions. And he tells one guy, he says, sell your possessions and give to the poor and come follow me and you'll have treasures in heaven. And there's like a lot of like, okay, Jesus wants me to get rid of all my stuff. Man, that's going to be pretty miserable, but okay, if that's what he wants, like reluctantly having to do some of those things that he taught about, until I actually started doing them, like until I actually got rid of the things that I didn't need and started realizing, hey, this is a way better way to live life. And it's just like there's people out there trying to get money, trying to convince me that if I buy whatever they're selling, my life is going to be better. And somewhere along the way, I bought into that thinking. So both, I think, laid the foundation for minimalism, and then minimalism, I think, even brought greater understanding of how I read some of those passages.
Yeah, it also, that story in the Bible that Jesus talks about, the guy, he doesn't follow Jesus because he was a wealthy man and he has a lot of stuff. And I think he put that emotional attachment. Sure, he wanted to follow Jesus, but his love for stuff was far greater than his love for Jesus and his love for following him. So I think that's a good tie into my next question, which is, how can we remove this emotion that a lot of people have? I know not everyone wants to be a minimalist and all that sort of stuff, but where can people really start? Where can they begin?
So I think that if my hope anywhere I go and anywhere I talk about this is that someone would be inspired to own a little bit less. And most people, I think, are in some way or another. Rarely do. I always say I can count probably on one hand how many people have said I'm wrong. Like very few people say, no, you're wrong. The goal is to just own as much stuff as I possibly can. Like no one really thinks that. But a lot of people, when they hear about minimalism or they hear about decluttering, they tend to go to the attic where they know there's a whole bunch of stuff, or they go to the garage that they can't park inside, and they think about the hardest thing that they would ever have to get rid of. Oh, I could never get rid of my books, or I could never get rid of my sentimental things. And they go to the hardest place in their house to get started. You could spend an hour in your attic and see no difference, from the time that you were up there, or an hour in your garage and see hardly any difference. And we get frustrated and overwhelmed and we throw up our hands and we're like, well, this isn't for me. So I always encourage people to go start in a room that they spend time in. Actually, the easiest place that they spend time in, I think, is the best place to get started questioning what you need to keep. A bedroom, a living room, even a car is a great place to start, because you could spend a couple hours in your bedroom just really thinking through, what are these things do I really need? What things are just kind of distracting from the purpose of this area? And you can spend 2 hours in the bedroom. You can spend 2 hours in the living room and sit down on the couch at the end of the day and feel the difference that you made. You could spend 20 minutes in your car and get in your car the next day and feel the difference in the area around you. And so I think that that's a beneficial way to do it. And then once you finish one space, go find the next easiest space that you spend time in and kind of build up this muscle to eventually get to the attic or the garage or the books, the arts and crafts, whatever it might be.
I like that. I think it's going to be helpful for me because, I'm going to revisit my room and this room.
There you go.
And try and remember several attachments to certain things that I know, if it's not serving a proper purpose in my life, then should I really have it?
Yeah. So two thoughts. I always encourage people to like define the purpose of a space. Like what is the purpose of your bedroom? I always say unless you're using it for an office, like the purpose of my bedroom, it should be for rest and intimacy. Like that's what it's for. Like that's what that space is for. And so are there things in that room that are actually keeping me away from rest and intimacy? Or the living room should be, this is where we relax as a family, is where we spend time together as a family. Like, are there things that have collected that are keeping that room from its purpose? And then the emotional attachment thing, I'll just mention this, that it's a difficult process for anyone and everyone. And it's easy, I think, when it gets hard to remove an item, to just stop and decide to keep it. Like, it's just too hard for me to go through my book collection, or it's too hard for me to go through my children's old toys that I store down in the basement. It's just, and so we stop there because it gets too hard, as opposed to, like, no, I sit in that for a little while. Like, why is it hard for me to get rid of these books that I know I'm not going to read again? Like, what is it about these books? What is it about me that makes me want to hold on to all these things? Or what is it about my children's childhood that I want to hold on to all these things and can't give them to some child down the street who could play with them tomorrow? I need to keep them in a box in my basement, and really try to find what those motivations are, I think is very, very helpful.
The book thing, I think for me, I'll read the book and then it sits on the shelf and I'm like, it looks good. I want people to know that I've got the book, and then I can say I've read the book, and it kind of gives me like extra credit, if that makes sense. And I love having books. I think for me, the more books that I have and I actually read them, the more knowledge I feel like I'm gaining as a result. And that's why I've kept all the books that I've read, and I'm still getting to some. Haven't read all of them yet, but we're getting there. But I don't think that it sort of takes over my life. I don't think it's a bad distraction by any stretch of the imagination. I think that they've all got some sort of use for my life in a good way. So yeah, that's my understanding of it, at least. But with other things, yeah.
I was kind of rethinking my office and what do I need to keep in my office. And I had when I was a pastor, and so I had my college degrees up on the wall. There was 3 of them. There was my undergraduate degree, there was my master's degree, and then there were my credentials with the denomination. And I had them all framed and they were on the wall. And I looked at them and I'm like, I wonder, why do I have these on the wall? And it occurred to me, like, for me, it wasn't that I found them motivating. It wasn't that I needed to be reminded that I had, graduated college. It was purely when people came into my office, I wanted them to notice that I had all these degrees in my past. And I could see that it was an unhealthy motivation. Like, it wasn't something that was spurring me forward. It was something that I wanted people to know about me the moment that they walked in the office. And I could see, I guess, if you're a doctor or something, like there are times, I suppose, when it's helpful to have those on the wall, but I'm like, I don't know. I think I'm just trying to impress people with what I did in the past rather than who I am today. And so I think that's a little bit of it. Like when you said that in the books about the books, like art is, like, I have books in my office, and there's a space for art that inspires us and motivates us and reminds us of certain messages and certain things in certain books that we need to be reminded of. But then there can also be, the other case of, no, I just want people to walk in and see bookcases full of books so that they think I'm smart, as opposed to really impressing them with who I am. My actual smarts, I just want them to think I'm smart. So
I've still got a lot to learn by the sounds of it, honestly, which I think I love. It kind of, what you're speaking to was the applause, which is one of the distractions you talk about in your book, I believe. And I think, I've got to get that sorted myself. Thanks for that. That's helpful. I love how you didn't attack me at all. It was like you shared a story, and that inspired me to rethink my understanding of why I've got so many books. Yeah. I mean, I said it, like I admitted to it.
Yeah. No, and I wouldn't have brought it up except that you said that even in your answer. I'm like, well, it could be positive, could be healthy, could be unhealthy. I think that's part of my point of, like, what is that? Like, what is the motivation here? And is it healthy? Is it unhealthy? Is it helping me? The way we define success, like, is it helping me become the best version of myself, or is it actually distracting me from it?
Yeah, I've got to remove the negative side of things and just focus more on the positive side of things. I think that's going to be more beneficial. But Joshua, man, I am mindful of your time. Got a couple more questions for you, if that's okay with you.
That's fine. I'll try to answer shorter. How about that? I feel like I've been taking all the time here.
It's totally okay. Why did you decide to write this book, Things That Matter?
The book has probably been a decade-long thinking in my head. The short answer is I was at a conference, and the guy up front said, "Close your eyes and answer this question. If you were to die today, what is the one thing that you would regret not completing or not accomplishing?" And writing this book is what came to my mind, because I was on another podcast a couple of weeks ago with a pretty good friend of mine, and he said, "I know you're known for minimalism, but I think this is the book that you were designed to write, because there's a chapter on possessions, there's a chapter on money, like there's a chapter on some of these things, but the reality is that there are other distractions in life and in society that can keep us from fully accomplishing things in those areas that matter most to us." And I wanted, number one, to raise some of those issues and maybe introduce new thoughts into people's lives, and other people who know that certain things have just been a distraction to them, to try to offer some ideas as to how to overcome that and start walking more fully in the future.
I like that. Are minimalists allowed to have a bit of money, like a lot of money?
Well, number one, there's no rule about minimalism, so people can do whatever they want with money and have as much as they want. There's a whole chapter in the book on money, and my hope is to challenge people on how much is enough. 78% of Americans are stressed about money. And I always wonder why. Like, we're one of the wealthiest nations in the history of the world. Like, why are 78% of us stressed about money? It's not because we don't have food. It's not because we don't have a roof. It's not because we don't have clothing. Like way more than 78% of us have our needs met, and yet we're still stressed about money. Why is that? Why is enough never enough? And I think it's because we look for money to provide things that it was never meant to provide, happiness and security. And I think that there are better uses of our money than just keeping it to ourselves. Certainly we need to meet our needs and care for our families, but I think most of us are already doing that. And are wanting more money, for holding on to money at the expense of very real needs in the world that we could be meeting today. And so people can find out more about my thoughts in the book. How about that? In my effort to try to keep my answer shorter, that would be it's a big topic. Anyway, the book will hopefully call people to generosity. And again, I think that when we get to the end of our lives, how much money we have in the bank account, I don't know, it might actually become a little regret to us in some ways of, there's probably some good I could have brought about in the world with this money if I didn't think I need to keep it all for myself.
Yeah. Well, we want to entice people to go and get a copy of the book and actually read it. So you've done a great job at that. Where do you want people to go and get a copy of this book, by the way? Where is your main sort of source?
Sure. Things That Matter, Overcoming Distraction to Pursue a More Meaningful Life should be available at all the major booksellers, wherever you are, anywhere in the world. I know it's being translated into a bunch of different languages already, but certainly wherever you buy books is where you should be able to find it, and it's already available now. My website is becomingminimalist.com, and that's where everything kind of flows out of. I'm on YouTube and most of the social media channels and have a number of different things that I do, but that's always home base for me, and everything runs through that site. So I would send people both places. Thanks for that.
Well, I'll make sure everyone knows where to find you. You're not that hard to find, by the way. You just type in your name, Joshua Becker, you come up, or Becoming Minimalist, you come up. Either way, honestly. So thank you, Google, for that.
Yes.
But two quick final questions. So this question I've recently started asking people, and I'm curious to know your response to this one. But what is the plot of your story that you're currently in the middle of?
What is the plot of my story that I'm currently in the middle of? I am nearing the end of a significant season in life. My oldest son went to college last year, and my youngest child is a sophomore in high school. And so the last 19 years of my life for me and my wife have been raising two children at home. And I guess who knows what the future holds, but it feels like a major season of life change is coming. And I don't know what happens necessarily after that, but that's the current plot season of my life.
Should be exciting times, man.
Yeah.
By the sound of it, honestly. This is my all-time favorite question. I love asking all my guests at the very end. It is a hypothetical one, but I want you to imagine with me for a moment that you've been able to reach the age of 100. All your friends and your family have decided to put together a film for you of everything you've ever said and everything you've ever done. Don't ask me how in the world they got it all. We'll call it magic for sake of argument. But they've been able to get it and show it to you on your 100th birthday. What do you want that film to say and to show about your life?
I want them to. I would go back to the same way I define success. I would hope that my life was proven to be faithful to God, that I loved my family and wife, and that I used my gifts and talents to make a difference in the world as best I possibly could.
Joshua,
And I hope there were some funny jokes along the way.
I have no doubt that there will be. Joshua Becker, man, thank you so much for your time, for your wisdom, your advice, and your stories, and for joining me today on the Storybox podcast.
Yes, thanks for having me. Very much appreciate it.